Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's, the next town hall in our series. I just want to, my name is Laura Masenka. I am in the events team here at Philabundance. So I'll be running things behind the scenes, and I just want to get us started and then turn it over to our presenters today. So 1 second here. Just so you know, this is being recorded for future sharing. We will be distributing this video to anyone who couldn't join us today and sending this out in an email later. We do have question and answer session at the end, so feel free to submit those questions at any time during the presentation, and our speakers will address them when we get to the end. If we don't have time to get to every question, we'll certainly follow up in an email and share some more information with you. All your lines are muted, so again, make sure you use that chat box. And now I'm just going to turn it over to Sarah Hertz, our Chief Development Officer, to get us started.
Okay. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the third in our bi-weekly series of town halls. If you've been able to attend our prior ones, you'll have heard about how we source food normally and how we're changing our model in order to find enough food to meet the increased demand, and more specifically, how we're working to find food in the midst of a greatly disrupted supply chain. Today, however, we're going to be looking more at the distribution side of our work, notably where our region would be in the absence of Philabundance, the growth of Philabundance and its positive impact on the community, and the role of the agency network in making that impact possible. As always, we've allowed time for your questions at the end, as Laura has already mentioned. We created these town halls to give you, our funders and our champions, a chance to learn how we're operating during this extraordinary time. So today's presenters are Melanie Cataldi. She's our Chief Impact Officer, but she's so much more than that, as she will tell you shortly, and Stacey Behm, our Chief Programs Officer, who oversees both the sourcing and distribution of our food. And now I'm going to turn the floor over to Melanie, who's going to share her experience of Philabundance.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you to everybody on the call. In echoing Sarah's sentiments, we are just humbled and honored by your support, in your belief in Philabundance, and if there's anything that we've learned in the past few months, it is that it takes a village. I've been part of the Philabundance team fighting hunger for over 20 years. I had a bit of a non-traditional path, both in how I joined the organization and my career path since I've been here. I decided to leave the corporate world behind about 20 years ago and went back to school for nutrition and public health. And as my master's project at that time, I developed a culinary arts workforce development program, which later officially became the Philabundance Community Kitchen, or as we affectionately call it, PCK. I know that some of you on the call are supporters of PCK, and I want to thank you for joining us in transforming lives through food. My path with Philabundance went from helping to start PCK to overseeing all programs, to overseeing operations as the Chief Operating Officer, and then to my current role as Chief Impact Officer. My focus now is to help the organization develop collaborative programs that focus on a long-term impact around fighting hunger and increasing food security. We're calling those initiatives Ending Hunger for Good. And we're doing that through cross-sector partnerships, pairing food with housing, healthcare, education, workforce development, and financial literacy. And of course, our anchor program to really increasing stability is PCK. For anybody on the call that's not familiar with PCK, it is a 14-week culinary arts workforce development program for adults 18 years or over. And it gives them the opportunity to start again, to kind of begin anew. Through staff and externships, students learn both basic culinary arts, food service management, and all the skills that they need to make them employable. But it's really so much more than that. It's about learning trust. It's about transformation, to find a different kind of family, to let go of old behaviors that are not serving them any longer, and to rebuild and to transform. Because our staff have what we call special sauce, our 3-year average numbers or our outcomes from that program from 2017 to currently in 2020 boast a 55% graduation rate, an 83% job placement rate, and 68% of those placed are still working at 12 months, and 67%, at least as of fall of 2017, which was the last class from 2 years ago that we were able to measure, are still working at 2 years. The beginning wage is about $12 an hour to start, which we know isn't enough, but it's a good starting place. And our numbers show that it increases to about $13 over time, and our more recent classes are even seeing as high as $14 an hour for an average 2 years out from being placed. So the program was so successful that we are currently building a new facility in North Philadelphia. It is slated to be done by the end of July. And once that's done, we'll be able to double the workforce development that we do and produce millions of meals a year for the community. One of the things that I really appreciate about Philabundance is that the organization has offered me a chance to grow and to innovate, just as Philabundance has really changed their impact and changed according to the need that's out in the community. If you look at where we started, there's a picture of Pam Lawler on the right. She's our founder, and she founded Philabundance in 1984. And when Philabundance was founded, it was really a food rescue organization that didn't want to let any food go to waste, and then took that food and helped to feed people in need. When I started in 2000, Philabundance had about 40 employees, and we were still really focused on rescuing food and just making sure that it went to agencies that were then feeding people. And today we know the need to rescue food from landfill as important as ever. We know that 40% of the food produced in this country still goes to waste. But other things have changed as well. No longer are we only feeding people who have grown up with the food emergency system. We're now feeding people that have never had to do that before. We're helping to feed working families. With COVID-19, it's never been more apparent that people that have never had to have help with food before are now coming to agencies that are working with Philabundance just to make ends meet. Today, Philabundance is one of the largest food banks in the National Feeding America network. And I've seen Philabundance develop strategies all the way along to make sure that we keep up with the times. An example of that is a shift for us to be client-centered, to make sure that we're getting the food that people want. So an example of that is that when I first started, we used to send our truck around to a lot of the wonderful bakeries that make those nutty olive raisin loaves, the kind of bread that we would love to have at home. Not pre-sliced and not necessarily what you would make sandwiches on, but we used to get a lot of it donated. And we would send our truck around to stop at each of the bakeries to get any day-old bread. But at the end of the day, that's not the bread that our clients needed or wanted. And frankly, it wasn't that efficient for us to send a truck around to 40 different bakeries. So we changed that and we started working with some of our local, larger producing bread companies to get sliced bread by the truckload so that we could get the type of bread out that families need. In 2005, we merged with the Greater Philadelphia Food Bank so that because we were serving the same agencies, it was more efficient and we were able to give better service across the board. Another change I've seen is that we have transformed from running a lot of our own programs, we used to call them direct service programs, which we did in order to learn best practices about how to help feed people. But now we're really focused on agency capacity building. So going from learning best practices to really helping to share best practices and empower our agencies with whatever they need, be it refrigeration or technology or help with volunteers. Some examples around how we've changed how we distribute food are, say, the retail rescue, what we call direct link. Back in 2010, We picked up about 100,000 pounds from the local grocery stores and distributed that out over the course of the year to agencies feeding people. So 100,000 pounds. Last year in 2019, that same program distributed 11 million pounds. And we did that because instead of us going to the grocery stores, we have the relationship and we help the stores connect directly with the agencies. We make sure the agencies have the equipment that they need. And then we make sure that the relationship is managed and the store gets the data and the feedback that they need so that it's a positive and productive and effective and efficient outcome for the community that we're serving. Another example is our produce distributions. When I look at the beginning around 2010, when we first started measuring our larger pounds, and I think we were distributing just under 2 million pounds of produce a year, 1.8 actually. Last year, we distributed 10 million pounds of produce. And all of that is being done because we're working with our agencies more closely. They're really an extension of us. Last year, in total, with the help of our agency network, we distributed over 27 million pounds of food. But our agency network is about so much more than food. It's about agencies impacting the lives of our clients, not just through food, but through nourishment of people and community. Our sense of community for clients and volunteers alike in fact, is one of the things that we've really worried about and seen decrease during COVID-19. Our agencies have really had to find new ways, and we've helped them with that, ways to distribute food and to get food into people's homes. And I think the next thing really is going to be how can we help people coming out of social isolation, because the agency network really had a lot to do with that. With our new Ending Hunger for Good initiatives at Philabundance, aimed at long-term solutions around hunger, our agencies are more important than ever. We're distributing and partnering in new ways with agencies where they're not only distributing food and a sense of community, but now other services that help with stability, like financial literacy training or workforce development. These are the services that our clients need to win the war on poverty. But they aren't able to utilize those services if they're worried about where their next meal is coming from or whether their child will have a next meal today at all. Our agency network is critical to our success. It's a symbiotic relationship. We can't and wouldn't want to fulfill our growing mission without them. And they're increasingly relying on us for help with everything from food to refrigeration, training, and technology to increase their impact in the community. Just like my history with this organization, Philabundance and our agency network are growing and evolving together every day to meet the need. To give you a better idea of the role of the agencies, I'd like to share this video with you, and then my colleague Stacey Behm will be your next speaker.
You can just be patient, folks. We're trying to work on the sound right now. Some technical difficulties. Thanks.
Hello, sorry that you weren't able to hear the video. I do want to say that was pre-COVID. There were no masks and there was a lot of lack of social distancing there, but that was a video that we took a few months ago. And it was about Simple Way. They are an agency that operates out of Kensington, and they are one of our valuable and growing partners in serving the clients in the Kensington neighborhood, which is actually in the backyard of one of our warehouses. I'm Stacey Behm. I've been with Philabundance for 6 years in different roles. I started out actually consulting on some project work with our fundraising team, and moved into business process improvement projects, ran some IT projects, and now I'm leading operations around our food bank, what we call food in and food out. As the Chief Programs Officer, I oversee 50 employees who are responsible for our facilities, agency network, and food bank operations, as I mentioned. My team essentially finds the food and ensures its effective distribution to our network of 350 plus agencies. Our agencies are located in 9 counties that we serve, all located in 5 in southeastern Pennsylvania and 4 in southern New Jersey. So sorry again that you couldn't see that video, but I will give you some context for the scale of our agencies, the different types of agencies, what they do, and how we work with them pre and during COVID. Post-COVID, TBD, but we'll be in it with them. So essentially, our agencies are an extension of the Philabundance family. You heard Melanie talk about how we've evolved, how we moved from doing direct service ourselves, where we were learning and implementing programs to serve individuals directly. We have evolved and scaled up to the point where we are now more effectively serving our community by working with our agencies to empower them to represent the individuals that they serve, and they are oftentimes the voice for us as to what their community's specific needs are. So we scaled our ability to not only source but distribute food. We have a fleet of trucks. You heard Melanie talk about some numbers in terms of the amount of food that we distribute. So as we shifted from direct distribution to this model of community enabled or community empowered, an example would be our Fresh for All program. So this is a farmer's market style program where we would deliver fresh fruit, and our staff used to run the program, and we did that for a number of years. But as we were learning and working more closely with our agencies, it became to a tipping point where it made sense for our agencies, Mount Zion CME Church, for example, and Sharon Hill, to take over running the distributions, because they were more closely connected to the individuals that were showing up every day, and they held and continue to hold those relationships with the individuals. This particular agency in Delaware County, they have the space the size of a single car garage, and yet each week they're able to feed more than 200 clients with our support through their Fresh for All program. So what do our agencies do? They're really at the ground level, as I've essentially intimated. They've established relationships, and they're better able to speak to the real need on the ground in their community. Some agencies provide clothing for clients, so not only are they providing food, but like Maddie Dixie Community Cupboard in Ambler provides clothing. Others provide computer literacy training, or even simply access to a computer where individuals can come in and search the internet for jobs or apply for jobs or find other resources. If an agency does not provide a particular service that a client needs, they're often acting as advocates, connecting the individuals to the right resource. A majority of our member agencies are pantries. That would be a small pantry that might be located in a church basement or in a community center, where they operate with maybe 2 people that are in charge of getting the food in and getting the food out. I would say that that's a great majority of our network, and then about 35% of our network of 350 plus agencies, they offer what we refer to as Food Plus. They are able to run larger distributions. They are providing healthcare screenings, legal advice, financial literacy, even advocacy around issues like immigrant justice, for example. The Monco Anti-Hunger Network, located in Lansdale in Montgomery County, is one of our larger partners. They're part of that 35%. They are launching a drive-through distribution tomorrow. They're planning on doing that. I mean, that's an example of what they can do, not only because we partner with them and we provide them with food and vehicles, but that they are of the size where they are able to provide additional services and launch a big distribution, like a drive-up car distribution. Feast of Justice is another example. They're located in Northeast Philly. In addition to food, they're also providing mental health counseling and in fact are incorporating telepsych services now in response to the pandemic and social distancing. They also offer computer labs that are open to any individuals that need to come in and access the internet. Others are taking on, other of our agencies are taking on an additional workload of serving clients as part of the City of Philadelphia's emergency food response since the pandemic. So of our agency network, we looked and said who could step up to the plate in this particular time of need, and we were able to contribute to the city's effort around getting even more food out into the community. So because Philabundance can provide large amounts of food at little to no cost to the agencies, we can enable the small pantries like in the church basement to go from serving a handful of families to essentially serving an entire neighborhood and becoming a reliable resource for hundreds of families in their community. So we really we offer a multiplier effect. I would say that is one of the greatest values that we add to the network. We are a connector. We're connecting them to resources, information, and funding that they wouldn't otherwise have access to. We can source food that they don't have access to. Melanie mentioned the amount of food and that we established direct relationships with vendors and donors to provide truckloads worth of donations. So we have those relationships and we have the staff dedicated to maintaining those. That benefits the network. We are able to get better pricing, and thanks to donors like you, we are able to provide healthy food plus things like vehicles, equipment, whether it's a computer or it's a hand cart. It could be tables, it could be tents for their outdoor distributions. We're able to provide training, and now in our COVID response, thanks to donations from individuals like you, we are also able to ensure safety by providing PPE, cleaning supplies, and boxes and bags for no-touch distributions in this current climate. Additionally, we are able to supplement their volunteer base through our volunteer pool. We offer free training to them on safe food handling services so that they're able to protect their clients and ensure the safety of the food that we are distributing to them and then out into the community. We leverage regional or national opportunities through Feeding America, for example, of which we are a member. And so we have access to whether it's a grant or a program to not only leverage what we do, but to offer direct support to agencies. So for example, we are currently participating in the Healthy Pantry Initiative, which is a project of Feeding Pennsylvania in partnership with the Pennsylvania Department of Health. So this initiative is working to increase access to healthy food options in our food pantries. So we, as a result of this funding and this relationship with Feeding Pennsylvania, we're able to hire a nutrition educator who will be with us on a 2-year basis. And she is working directly with a subset of our agencies to implement demonstrations around cooking healthy food, recipe demonstrations, helping agencies set up their pantries in a way that promote healthy choices by the clients. So we essentially rely on our agencies to provide access to the healthy food in a safe and respectful manner, and to represent their community by maintaining open lines of communication with Philabundance. Dignity and respect in all of our interactions between us and them, as well as them and the individual clients, is of utmost importance and always emphasized in the way that we work together. In fact, in our membership agreement with our agencies, the first term that they're agreeing to when they sign that piece of paper is that they will not engage in discrimination. So I would say that another benefit that we add is that we do monitor our agencies, and knowing that we all expect the volunteers, the staff, and the clients to be treated with respect, we are a resource for them, for clients or staff or volunteers if they feel that something's not going well with a particular agency. That doesn't happen often. It's actually very rare. In the 6 years that I've been here, there's been one instance where we did receive some complaints of how individuals were being treated when they went to get food. And after we investigated, we found that the complaints were warranted and we no longer work with that agency. So we uphold our standards and take them very seriously. and our community knows that they can count on us. Traditionally, we and our agencies have always encouraged a choice model of food access to bring dignity to food assistance. So what does that mean? Choice is how you and I shop for food. You walk into the grocery store, you take what you need or you want, and you put it in your cart. So our pantries follow that model as well. It is the preferred way to offer a respectful and dignified experience for the clients, allowing them to select food that they choose versus receiving pre-selected food. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we are not able to support that as we have previously for the duration of this social distance climate. So now the model has changed to what we call no touch, and the preference is for us to provide pre-boxed food of meals components that can be made into a meal to be distributed at a distance at different distributions. So that the drive-through car distribution I referenced earlier that our agency in Montgomery County is doing, that's a case where the car will pull up, they'll pop their trunk, and then a volunteer or a staff member will put the food in their trunk, minimizing the interaction. Before COVID, we served 90,000 individuals a week through our agency network. Last year, you heard Melanie say that we distributed over 27 million pounds. So roughly, if you figure that a meal is 1.2 pounds, we distributed approximately 22 million meals in our 9-county service area. So since COVID, we are seeing a marked increase in need and demand. Across the board, our agencies have reported a dramatic increase of 30 to 60% more people getting in line for food, and many are there for the first time. In fact, Feeding America did a survey a month ago. It was early on in the effort, but they surveyed their 200 food bank members across the country about how many people were in line for the first time in the past 6 months, as a gauge of roughly how many people are new to the food insecurity situation. And at that time, a lot of the food banks are reporting that approximately 40% of the people in line were new. We've all seen the lines on the news recently, and we know that this problem was here before the pandemic, and yet it's just very dramatically exacerbated by 21 million jobs lost, an unemployment rate of 16%. Actually, I think that the jobs lost is higher. So the need is great, and it's going to be great for a long time. And we will be, Philadelphia is known for being one of the poorer cities and having a high rate of food insecurity. In fact, we are second to California as a state that has filed the most unemployment claims. Philadelphia, before COVID, was in a situation of 1 in 5 people reporting hunger and not knowing where their next meal was coming from. Not sure what that is now. I haven't seen those numbers, but with 16% unemployment, when it was 4% 2 months ago, we can anticipate that it's increased and will be sustained for quite some time. So thanks to your support, Philabundance has been able to help our agencies meet their needs and meet their challenges and remain a reliable partner through this crisis. We've been able to support their efforts at this time by removing any cost barriers around handling fees for delivering food, providing produce to even more agencies, and as I mentioned earlier, providing protective personal equipment like masks and gloves and bags for pre-packing food to support their no-touch distributions. Additionally, we've been focused on sourcing and building emergency relief boxes, which is essentially is a box of shelf-stable food that contains components that can be made into a meal when the individual gets at home. And we've been leveraging volunteers in our warehouse in South Philly to help build these boxes and for us to push them out into the community. So initially, when the pandemic struck, nearly 70 of our agency partners closed their doors. This was for one reason or another, but I would say that it was in part because a lot of our agencies are run by older adults or volunteers, and these people had concerns around pre-existing conditions or personal safety. Fortunately, about 20 of those 70 have reopened in the past 3 weeks, and that is in part because Philabundance has been able to provide them with some of the best practices around social distancing, as well as the PPE and the pre-boxed food. So through our regular feedback loop, the agencies are sharing a lot of information with us on a weekly basis about what their needs are. And what they have shared recently is that they're wondering how they're going to sustain their response because we're all anticipating that we're definitely in a marathon. not a sprint, and that this marathon might be a year long, it could be a year and a half. No one really knows yet, but they're thinking about how do we continue to serve and meet this level of need in, say, the space that we have or the amount of food that we have. So that is on our mind as well as we're planning for the next 12 months. We will continue to serve as the multiplier and the connector with ongoing support from donors like you. The tail on this economic recovery is long, and it will require the commitment of not only Philabundance, but other hunger relief agencies, local legislators, and our strategic partners, and individuals like you from our community. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Stacey. I'm now going to move on to the question and answer session. If anyone has anything. Does anyone have questions? I'll give it a minute in case it's
Laura, there is a question. There are a couple questions that are coming up in the chat box. Okay, one is about our work with Project Home and whether we work with Project Home and what that is. And maybe Melanie is best placed to respond to that. But you're muted, Melanie.
Would be better if I was unmuted. There we go.
Thank you.
Project Home is wonderful. They're a wonderful partner. We actually work with them in a couple of ways. We are partners in the Hub of Hope, and that was pre-COVID, a feeding area down basically under City Hall for folks that needed extra help for food, but that as a partnership, we wanted people to go to a place instead of having to be fed outdoors. And so Project Home runs the site for the Hub of Hope, and we are providing the food in collaboration with another one of our agencies. Of course, since COVID, we've now moved that outside so that everybody can practice social distancing, but the partnership remains the same. The other thing is that with COVID, Project Home realized that they wanted to do much more street outreach to connect people with services. And that's so much easier to do, to approach somebody if you have a meal in your hand to offer first, right? Because great conversation starts with food. And so we make meals for Project Home every week to then go with their outreach workers to go out and do outreach to feed people and to see if they can connect folks on the street with other services.
I can take the next question. Has adding volunteers met our needs, or do we anticipate hiring? We've been in a very fortunate position where the community has responded in a tremendous way to our need, and we have had volunteers signing up for every shift, and we have been able to, we've had to cut back on the number of volunteers that we could welcome in just because of social distancing and CDC guidelines. However, we have been able to maintain full shifts, 2 shifts a day, Monday through Friday. So we have been well situated on the labor front so far. Thank you. And in terms of the next question, does Philabundance reach out to surrounding counties such as Montgomery and Norristown where there would be neighbors in need? We do. We work with agencies in both of those areas. Montgomery has a couple of our more strategic partners that are larger and provide food plus services. So we do absolutely work with them.
Another question that's come up, can you talk a little bit more about to what extent we're partnering with state and city elected officials, and to what extent are they helping us?
I think any of us could take this. Do we have a preference? I'll start. We do work closely with a range of city and state officials. As I think both Melanie and Stacey mentioned, we are a member agency of Feeding Pennsylvania, which is a voice for us at the state level, but we also have our own relationships with a lot of elected officials at the state level, and we've been working especially closely at the city level in Philadelphia with the citywide distribution, which we've been doing for a number of weeks now, and that's a very close partnership that we have with them. We have a number of city council people we speak with regularly, and I know just last week we had a nice call with Senator Casey's office. And I don't know if Stacey or Melanie want to add to that at all.
Well, there are efforts underway, particularly with COVID, to get food out as quickly as possible, and the government has been supportive through the USDA. And so how we get involved in that is through Feeding PA, as well as our Kate Scully, who is our Director of Government Affairs. She is a conduit on our behalf with individuals like Senator Casey, contacts at the USDA and locally as well in Philadelphia around signing on to letters in support of, say, extending I'm forgetting the term right now. So essentially, when you distribute government food, individuals have to be qualified to receive that food, and they have to sign paperwork. And as a result of the pandemic and social distancing, the USDA did remove that requirement for a period of time. So we support efforts like that. And then they just recently wanted to extend, we wanted to extend that period of time of not having to sign paperwork. And so we get involved in, again, signing on to letters for that effort and speaking on behalf of that as another example.
And I would just add locally that I think that we have really strong ties, especially say with the city of Philadelphia and public officials there, where when either side needs help, we don't hesitate to go to the other. So helping the city with the 40 food distribution sites, or they came to us and asked if there was any way that we could supply meals to some of their pop-up shelters for folks that needed to quarantine due to COVID, but couldn't do so at home. And so we're providing those meals. I think every week new opportunities come up, and I think both sides are really comfortable going to the other to ask for help, which is great.
Next question, and again, I think anyone can answer this. Does Feeding America supply food itself?
I'm going to take that one, Stace.
Yeah, they do. And we take advantage of that through different online portals they have where they put offers of food out. So Feeding America does a lot of work on behalf of the network, and particularly with establishing relationships with really large vendors and distributors that are national or global in nature. So they're a great resource.
I would just add to that not only is Feeding America a source of food for us, it's also a source of revenue for us as well. They work with many national funders and then re-grant to us, usually in a highly competitive bidding process, a grant awarding process. So they're a good, a very strong network for us to be a part of.
Okay. I don't think there are any more questions. So Sarah, I'll leave it with you.
Oh, thank you, Mark Bender. So before we close this particular program, I just wanted to share with you a small anecdote about another way Philabundance works with its partners. So last Friday afternoon, which as you may or may not remember was actually the beginning of Memorial Day weekend, an internal email went out at Philabundance to our staff requesting that anyone who wanted to volunteer to distribute the next day, food the next day, could sign up. So one of our agencies, Kitchen of Love, needed some help delivering senior food boxes, which is a government-funded program, to clients who would ordinarily have to travel to pick up these 30-pound boxes and a block of commodity cheese. When I arrived on Saturday morning, I was just amazed and really quite moved to find at least 8 of my colleagues coming together in the pouring rain on a holiday weekend from quite distances. Some had traveled probably up to an hour to get these boxes to the people who needed them. This task wasn't anyone's job. It wasn't on anyone's job description. No one was getting overtime for this. They simply and quietly did the right thing because people needed food and because Philabundance is here to provide it for them. So on that note, I would like to thank you for making the time to join us today. You'll receive a link to a recording of this discussion. Please feel free to share it with others. We also rely on your feedback to help us determine topics and formats for these bi-weekly events. I will say that what we've been doing is creating these events really specifically for our key donors, and then for a couple of weeks, they're really only available for this audience, and then we'll release them to the public for broader distribution. None of the work discussed by Melanie and Stacey would be possible, of course, without the incredibly generous support of private philanthropy. We're keenly aware of this, and we are grateful. Although we may move into the yellow zone soon and then the green and achieve some new sense of normal, the devastating economic impact of COVID will be with us for an unforeseeable time. Thank you for helping us do this important work today, and thank you for continuing to partner with us in the future. Stay safe and be well.